So for our shade we're going to use some Despair Green, and you all know the drill here, that we are going to use our traditional lining technique, where we just paint out all the recessed parts to pick out the details. A little bit of glaze, always good to get our color flowing. This is a very saturated paint. Actually, I'm going to use another brush for this. So let's see how our Despair Green works with our red. Well, you can see that we get a very dark tone in our recessed areas. It's quite good to distinguish those details. Alright, so that's our shade finished with the Despair Green, and we can see that all the details are popping really nice now. It's almost too intense, but that's going to be evened out later on when we're finishing the highlights and the other details around the red armor. So just be patient there. Sometimes you can be a little bit skeptical when painting a miniature with a lot of detail. When you have finished the armor and you think something is weird about it, that's just the other details around it having really messy colors on them because they aren't painted yet. So therefore some painters are like to paint out their details in black before they take a good look at the main material they have painted, just to get a good view of it. We are going to continue working up the red with some Aldebaran red. Let's get a little bit of that orange hint to it. So it's a bit of a more warm kind of red. It will work excellent with our Tech Priest armor here. as I mentioned before, we want this to be a more warmer tone to it. Though we added the spare green to make it more cold in the shades, it doesn't prevent us from making the overall colors of the armor more warm. I'm not gonna use that much glaze to it, as I want it to cover fairly good, since it's not going to be that prominent onto the already red parts of the armor. So mainly just gonna use water for this. Though it is a good thing that it doesn't cover too well, because then we can work bigger areas with it. So I'm gonna make fairly thick highlights to prepare for oncoming second layers of highlights on those edges. We can paint in more surface. Therefore I mainly choose this color because it doesn't contrast too much with our already existing colors. So it's easier to lay down the base work for the other colors that's coming in later. As I found many times when you're airbrushing, and once you're done with that, you need to get on with the regular brush work. You need to sort of fix up some of the airbrush areas, because the airbrush can't be too detailed. So sometimes I plan what colors I'm going to use with the brush after the airbrush. Sort of a planning on combination of colors to get the best result you can get when using brush and airbrush. It can be quite frustrating. It's very rewarding once you get the hang of it. Especially the bigger plates will get a lot more Aldebaran red to it. I will use a little bit of glaze to make a more of a transition. You can see how easily the Aldebaran red blends into our pre-existing reds that we've done with the airbrush. It's kind of good to have that option to have this red that blends in fairly well, because it can be quite tricky since the airbrushing has a lot of shifting reds now because of the pre-highlights and such. So what we're going to do is that the armor is going to be a little bit reflective. We're going to make some light stripes that's climbing up towards the armor. So that's gonna make it look a little bit cooler, maybe a bit more interesting. So I mainly choose these two to climb upwards to sort of catch the overall feeling of reflections on the armor plate. If I were only to choose this one here, it would look kind of flat here. So I might have to add another one here, and also I need to add one here as well. You can imagine once you flip around the miniature, you want to see where all the points of light are coming from. Therefore you can't make it a flat 2D sketch, you have to make it 3D. So you have to be thinking of where all the areas of light are coming from. So of course if we make one here, we have to make one here as well. So there's a little bit of light theory for you once you get into painting that non-metallic metal in the future as well. which I found out non-metallic metals can vary a lot. You don't have to be scientific about it always. So just keep a steady hand and paint out all the little details. You can make a light spot here on the foot. Prepare a circular shape for that. And same thing on his knee here. A bit of a circular spot. Also gonna make a highlight underneath his knee pad here. I make this little spot here because I want to show that the light bounces. But yeah, you get the hang of it, how this is done, and you can see already that our to us it's the left leg, but anatomically it's the right leg. So the right leg here got more shape to it now than our left leg. So you can imagine we just work this up for the entire mole, and we put little light stripes where needed. And once that's finished, we will continue making our crisper highlights to define the armor even more. So I've finished painting out all the red. As you can see, it's very subtle onto the Mini. It doesn't contrast too much. And I sketch it out, all the parts where I want the light to be as well. And I have started testing the other highlights that's coming afterwards. We are going to mix some paints together. As you can see on my palette, I have already tried some. So we're going to use light orange. I'm going to use the German orange. I'm going to use a little bit of the Aldebaran red again. This is just to make the highlight a little bit softer against our previous painted paints. I'm going to use some glaze with this as well. So mainly I'm using the German orange. Adding a little bit of the light orange to get rid of that cold feeling from the German orange. A little bit more. It's about a 50-50 of the light and German orange. To push around. Now we're going to do fine highlights of this to our armor here. Into our make this fade a little bit more. See how our leg here is taking shape. It's all about the build up from all the highlights together. Total effect of all of them together. And then lastly some ice yellow to that. So I'll show a couple of minutes. So you can see we have some spots where we need a more circular point of highlight. Camera looks really prominent. It really isn't, however. See our leg is taking shape now. So with all our highlights out of the way now, we can continue painting out our little ice yellow spots. I'm also going to mix a little bit of a highlight with the ice yellow as well. So yes, let's start. So ice yellow. I'm gonna be needing much of this. Gonna add a little bit of glaze to this, so I need to be able to make some transitions here and there with this paint. For starters, on this line here, we need a little bit of a transition. So you're gonna paint all the points and edges this color to show how it's more or less exposed to light source. On the knee pad here, I'm going to make one little dot in the center of our previous painted highlight. Make a little brighter stripe here for me. You can see how the reflection spot makes more sense now. One got that little hint of shine to it. Same down here. Yeah, so got a much more nicer visually red armor now. And all the edges where the highlights meet, it's good to highlight with this. Something like that. And also here would be sensible to add a little point as well. So just keep doing this on all the edges. And depending on how much reflection you want is how big you make the little spherical brush strokes. So yeah, something like this. You see we got a pretty nice and decent leg here. Much more colorful and striking than before. The main reason why I choose the ice yellow is because it gives off a more of a yellow reflection, and that fits very well with a brighter, warmer red tone to it. If I wanted to paint with a colder red, I would probably choose a more beige-like highlight for it instead of the ice yellow. Somewhere in the line like an ivory or an aged white highlight instead. But the ice yellow is still pretty cold in the paint, but warm enough for the overall color scheme we got here. So that's all our light spots. Might be a little bit overwhelming now, but that's because we haven't painted out all the other details yet. But yeah, you can see that the armor stands out pretty nice now, and the highlights intensifies the red a little bit. So I'll continue basing out all the blacks and all the other small details now. That's the body for the Tech Priest, entirely finished now. And as you can see, the with all the details painted out, you can see the red more clearly now, and all the highlights and the painted out details, they add to each other and make the model more interesting to look at. All right, thank you for watching.